Yes, it is true. Moon Knight is possibly my favorite Marvel series since the release of Daredevil, which for me is one of the best things that Marvel has done of all time. I do think that Moon Knight has some heavy shoes to fill, and I have seen the first 4 episodes of the series. Thank you to Disney for sending those over. This is going to be my non-spoiler reaction review for them. I can't really talk much about it because there is a lot to talk in this episode, so I'm pretty much going to give the longer version of what my Twitter reaction would have been, which on Twitter I said Moon Knight is so far the best and most different Marvel show yet. It's intriguing, dark, thrilling. Oscar Isaac is the best addition to the MCU since Phase 1 and brings a performance that isn't just torturing, but it's addicting to watch, and it really is Indiana Jones meets Fight Club like everyone was talking about. In addition, I'm loving what Marvel is continuing to do with Phase 4 of the MCU, introducing new characters and new parts of the universe that we read about for so many years. This is just another chapter that will continue to wow many and give into Khonshu, and you will understand. Giving that reaction and really much giving that thoughts, guys, I have a lot to discuss on this, so if you are looking forward to my full spoiler thoughts, I'll be dropping episode reviews as they release right at midnight, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on content like that, especially if you love talking movies and TV, because I am a major geek. I love the MCU, I love Star Wars, I love DC, I also love indie movies as well, and I just want to have you guys a part of that discussion, as well as leave your thoughts and comments. How excited are you for the Moon Knight series? This again has been my most anticipated show for the entire year. Yes, I mean that. It would have been The Last of Us, but of course that got pushed to 2023, so now it is Moon Knight, who is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. Then you cast in that Oscar Isaac's going to be playing the main character. Shit, you have me on board. Then you have some fantastic directors coming in, especially with Benson and Moorhead, who have done the films like Synchronic, who I think, while not perfect movies, are really interesting visionaries, and they're already announced to be doing Loki Season 2, which is awesome. So there are a lot of exciting things leading into the show, and it is really much everything I expected it to be and more. As someone who really much more grew up on just looking at Moon Knight and loving him, and then getting into the modern day comics of when he did have the split personality, and now all these years back going finally into the older comic decades of when before he had that. This is the perfect mix of both, and it is the MCU's own interpretation of this character. So it's not a straight perfect adaptation of it. They do take some liberties and do make some changes between Mark and, of course, Stephen Grant. For me, that is okay for what they are doing, especially when it comes down to Moon Knight and Mr. Knight and the two different personas that we have here and the two different personalities that we are very much dealing with that we see from the trailers and all the conversations that the hosts have talked about. As well, adding into this, I did get to be a part of the press conference for this and actually read and really much listen to the cast and everyone really much talk about this show, and I feel like there is a lot of wonderful and amazing developments for these characters that I thought personally was some of the most magical things that I've seen. And actually hearing the actors talk about these certain issues and just certain things that they were wanting to go for within Moon Knight was one of the most spectacle things that I have personally seen and really much heard. And I feel like for me, the passion behind this was very important, because Oscar Isaac is an actor who I feel like is very picky with what he does, especially when it comes down to blockbusters and some of the issues that he addressed while doing Star Wars. Adding in from there as well, Ethan Hawke is someone who has said that he's very much not into the comic book genre and also never wanted to play a villain. Something changed his mind in here, and again, hearing about how excited he was to take on this role after reading the script was something very much important to me as well. And I can't express enough, this show is damn great. And it's psychologically like fun because you're playing around with the same thing of like, oh, is this reality? Is this not? And each episode feels different than the last. The only few things that I can actually really much talk about nitpicks and cons, because I will mention that. And again, these are things that are hard to really much come around besides the visual effects, which I think are a little bit spotty here and there. But even with screeners, when you get them ahead, sometimes the visual effects aren't completely done. So it's hard to judge those in full until they finally do release on Disney+. But one of the things that I'm starting to get kind of nervous with all these Marvel shows, and this is one of the cons that I do have for this, again, might change my mind in the last 2 episodes, maybe not, maybe will, we will see, is the length of these seasons. I feel like all these shows on Disney Plus are needing like that 1 or 2 more episodes to really flesh out the entirety of everything that is going on. And for me, Moon Knight, so far with 4 episodes, there's still a lot to wrap up, still a lot to dive into, and I feel like it's just dipping its toes into the entire premise of the supernatural that it's starting to explore and that we have seen from the trailers. But when it comes down to the actual multiple personalities and bringing this character to life, especially Moon Knight, I actually think they got that down perfect. And a lot of that does go down to Oscar Isaac's performance, which is, again, like I mentioned in my tweet, is one of the best additions to the MCU since Phase 1. Honestly, arguably also since Chris Evans as Captain America. I love Oscar Isaac in this role. I want to see Moon Knight interact with every sort of character in the MCU possible down the road. But if not, if this is what we get, because this is so self-contained, there's maybe one or two mentions to certain things inside the MCU that are very, very small. Like, if you're not listening, it was something that I was like, oh, yep, that's that. I know what that place is called. I know what that's from. It's certain things like that, but they're so small. This is so disconnected from the rest of the MCU, and that's totally fine to see the direction that they are taking that in, because I would rather take stories like this when you're introducing a character like Moon Knight, who is very much touching in to a different aspect of the Marvel universe that we all, I mean, if you read up on him and read up on certain issues of Marvel Comics, this is something that we've been wanting to see. And I feel like what Oscar Isaac and really much the cast and crew gets down is the split personality, is that there comes an episode where one of the characters realizes that Steven and Mark, while yes, you understand that they're in the same body, and you, yeah, in mental capacity, you understand that they are the same person, there comes a realization where it's like, this is the same person. They are just dealing with this, and they don't know how to deal with it. And in that moment, even when they discuss or talk with Mark or even Steven, and while it's two different people they're talking to, in the center of it all, it is the same person. And I found that to be such an important aspect of this entire show and movie, that I feel like when we do see split personalities in sort of properties, we don't see a lot of that in there. And I found that to be, again, some of the most important parts of this entire show, and honestly one of the most wicked and amazing ones so far. And it just becomes this new flair that we haven't seen from the MCU once again yet, and it's great. As well as Ethan Hawke is great. Lila, she's amazing. And really much the entire cast is really fleshed out into a way where you do start to understand them. One of the things that I was really looking forward to this was how dark was this series going to be. Now, it's not as Netflix dark as it is, but when it comes down to the MCU, this is easily the most brutal and dark series yet. You see Moon Knight get stabbed. You see him beat and pummel people to death. You see blood. Lots of it. And I was kind of surprised by that. Now, I'm not saying it's like a gore fest, but for an MCU, something that we have seen blood before, there is a lot in here. And I would actually equivalent some of the blood back into some of the more minor seasons of The Punisher and Daredevil, which, again, I'm all for. Now, it's not like you're seeing blood and guts fly everywhere, but again, if your kids, and maybe you don't like your kids seeing that, maybe hold off Moon Knight for just a bit. But I do like that they actually brought that in from the comics, again, how visceral and brutal Moon Knight can be, and actually seeing the two different personalities between Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, and the quirkiness that they actually do bring into the character, because there are many different interpretations of this character, and they brought two different versions that I love so much. The modern take, which is a little bit more serious, a little bit more dire, and of course, the other version that's quirky. And I love quirky Moon Knight as well. So there's so much greatness in this show. I love this show so far. I love the supernatural aspects. I love how dark it is. I love how it's really much Marvel Phase 4 has been just expanding all the world, introducing new characters, and giving us so much more to adore. There's so much to praise in this show. And again, there's some things that I'm a little bit can hold my reservations towards, again, the length of the season and certain things, but this is such a globe-trotting adventure that going into the Egyptian deserts, or whether you're on just the streets of England, there's so much fun to be had in this show, and so many exciting things, new things, and really big surprises. And there are multiple moments where you're like, is this real or is this not? It's a show that introduces a lot of different aspects, and I'm loving it so far. So I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. Again, leave your guys' comments, your thoughts down there. Hit that like and subscribe button, as well as head on over to Sandwich and Films if you're interested in seeing movies early and just getting up to news on all the early movie news. So over there, guys, thank you so much again for watching this. And of course, until next time, stay classy.